Okay. Good morning. Can everybody hear slash see me? Okay.
Good morning. I see you.
Morning.
Um, Welcome to the University Relations workshop on graphic design and accessibility. My name is Eric Nguyen. I'm one of the graphic artists here at NSU, and my co-host today will be Tiffany Anderson. She is also a graphic artist here at NSU. Before we get started with our presentations, I just wanted to let everybody know that there will be a Q&A at the end. So if you could please keep all of your questions until then. We will also be drawing for the swag bag afterwards. With that being said, I'm gonna jump right in. Um, Okay, so graphic design and accessibility. Today we'll be focusing on topics to assist you as you design promotional materials for NSU. These topics will include approaching a design, keeping it branded, and design guidelines. Before I start, I have a quick note. We are here to support you. If you need to submit a design request, you can do so by emailing cmprojects@nsuok.edu. Our first topic is approaching a design need. Think it through. Before starting, take a step back and assess your needs for the project at hand. Here are a few questions you might want to ask. Who are the audience? What is the message? What is the budget? What is the best medium? This could be a flyer, a brochure, a poster, or something digital like a social media graphic. Other things to think about are, what will the final dimensions need to be? Will it have multiple pages? Will it be front and back? Do you have color limitations? Will there be a bleed? And will it need to be web accessible? Our next topic is complying with the NSU brand. There are three essential components of the university's brand. These include the color palette, logos, and font families. Usage guidelines for these components are detailed in our NSU Graphic Standards book. Speaking of the graphic standards, you can find it for download at nsuok.edu/cm in the Standards and Guides tab. A graphic standards workshop is coming soon. By using the NSU branding, it helps keep designs fresh and consistent by providing unity and so much more. Our next topic is design and layout, the best practices. Whoops. What are the design principles and why should they be followed? Design principles are the rules a designer follows to create effective and attractive compositions. These principles include negative space, hierarchy, contrast, alignment, and repetition. Number one, embrace the negative space. Negative space is the space in between the design elements of your project. Negative space lets the design breathe, helps create focal points, and brings sophistication to a design. Here are some examples. On the good, everything has breathing room that gives each part of the design a chance to shine. It also helps give the project a clean and easy to follow appearance. Well, the bad example, there's not any breathing room. Everything's kind of squished together. It's kind of hard to tell what goes with what and just what. It's just kind of a mess. Number two, set visual hierarchy and focal points. Hierarchy is using placement and elements such as size, color, and shape to show the importance of different elements and the order in which they should be viewed. Hierarchy can add structure, create direction, add emphasis, and assist with navigation. Here are some examples. On the good, it gives clear direction for the eyes to follow. All the information is in the order of how it should be viewed. While on the bad, it's scattered randomly, and it makes the viewer have to kind of look around for stuff. The logo, you can kind of barely see it. It's just not in a great order. Number 3, use contrast to draw attention and create interest. Contrast can be one of the most important contributors to achieve a successful attention-grabbing layout. This can be achieved by using colors, differing shapes, and typefaces. Here are some examples. In the good, it uses contrast in the colors, in the different types of shapes, and the placements, as well as the fonts. For the bad, it's bland. There's not really anything that stands out because all the typefaces are the same. There's no real contrast in the size. The colors are hard to read on each other, and there's no interesting shapes that pop out. Number 4, be mindful of alignment. Alignment is the placement of visual elements so that they line up in a composition. Consistent use of alignment achieves organization, structure, connectivity, and cleanness. Here are some examples. On the good, it has a center alignment that makes it easy for the viewer's eye to follow down throughout the poster, while on the bad, there is no real set alignment, so you have to look up in the left and then to the side, and then it just bounces back and forth. Number 5, incorporate repetition. Repetition is repeating the same or similar design elements throughout a layout or design. Repetition creates unity, pattern, rhythm, and branding. Here are some examples. On the good, it shows how repetition can be used successfully. The colors, shapes, and elements are repeating in a pleasing and consistent way. The boxes are all that same squoval shape. The circle is repeated in the tips graphic and the timer, and the colors are also used multiple times. On the bad, it has a chaotic feeling. There is repetition, but not in a good way. They do use the same colors, but like on Resume, they're just kind of here and there. None of the boxes are the same shape, and that tips graphic is no longer a circle. Some other things I'd like to talk about are some typography tips. Try to avoid widows, orphans, and hyphenation. Choose your fonts carefully and try avoiding stretching type. 1, avoid hyphenation, widows, and orphans. Hyphenation is when words are broken up using a dash. Widow is a short line of text that is part of a paragraph, but has shifted down to the next page or column, leaving it alone and awkwardly spaced. An orphan is very close to the definition of a widow, except it is a single word hanging out in separation. You can see some examples on this screen. I also have some on this one. They're just a little harder to see because it's so small. Number 2, be mindful of legibility and readability. If a message is not readable, then the design falls apart. Font size, typeface, and color choices should be chosen wisely. Here are some examples of that. In the good one, the text is easy to read due to the differing colors used on the text, and the typefaces are bold enough that you can see. On the bad, it's hard to read because it's using a script font, which is a little too swirly, it's small, and it's only using one color, so there's nothing standing out. Number 3, avoid stretching type. When fonts are stretched horizontally or vertically, it distorts words, making them hard to read. Here are some examples. On the good, the text has not been stretched. It's easy to read. It doesn't take you long to read it. Whereas on the bad, it's been stretched. It's still legible, but it takes you a second to read it, especially on that link on the bottom. The last thing I want to talk about before I wrap up my part is please try and respect copyright laws. We know that sometimes you find graphics on the internet that you just love, but snagging random snagging random photos off the internet, not knowing the copyright guidelines, can result in infringement of copyright. This disrespects the artist's time and effort that went into creating the imagery and could result in monetary damages, lawsuits, or costly legal fees. That is it for my presentation, but up next is Print Ready Format and Web Accessibility by Tiffany Anderson.
Can everybody hear me? Okay, thank you, Eric. Now we're moving on to print-ready format and web accessibility. Here we have some helpful topics about understanding the importance of final print files and web accessing your documents at NSU. Starting with acknowledging print-ready format. Print-ready means your file doesn't need any additional alterations. These files can be printed by any in-house or commercial printer. Format means you have a final file for printing like PDFs or other proper printing compositions. Put them together and what do you get? A file ready to print and share with your audience. Here's a handy-dandy checklist to keep in mind as you are creating your document. I will go more in depth over each topic moving forward, starting with color profile. Have your color profile in CMYK. It stands for cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, the four main colors that printers use for ink and toners. Most designing programs default to this, such as Microsoft Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and InDesign. It never hurts to double-check your document properties before printing just to be sure it's in the right color profile. Always be sure to double-check them before printing. You can find your document properties within the settings, Ink Manager, or preferences of the program you are using. Keep that layout and margin. As you are creating a standard document, make sure all your important info is safely on the page by having a safe margin of an average document, which is 0.5 inches, and important imagery is no closer than 0.25 inches from any trimmed edge. More space is encouraged if your document is larger. Layout helps you visually share the most optimal presentation of your files. It creates focus and gives eye breaks to your audience. Margin keeps the important elements from being cut off during printing. Proper bleed and crop marks. Bleed allows artwork to run off the edge of a page while containing its contents. Allow at least a bleed of 0.125 inches for your file when printing, so there's enough clearance for your artwork. Crop marks, or trim marks, are lines that show the printer where to trim or cut, so it won't cut your project all wonky. Using these principles together will help ensure that you have a good document set up. Now that you have your layout, margin, bleed, and crop marks set up, don't forget about your images. Choose high-quality images when utilizing photos so that your audience can see those crisp images of your important projects. Photos of at least 300 ppi, or pixels per inch, create the best results for your print files. Printers use DPI, or dots per inch, for their printing program to recognize the same amount of ink applied to the same resolution of your document. Speaking of images, if you didn't know, NSU has images available to share using a photo sharing website called SmugMug. You can find all sorts of photos for your usage at nsukphotos.smugmug.com. After you have set up a proper document following the print ready checklist, it is time to save your final file for printing and sharing. Using raster file types like JPEGs, PNGs, GIFs, or TIFFs, often leave your document with lower quality so it's not so crispy and clear for your audience. Depending on your program, this will leave you with limited or possibly no options to include bleed or other print ready settings. An arm or a head might get chopped off if the printer doesn't know where to cut. PDF files are the more favorable file type for printed materials. They keep your project crispy with no loss of print quality, allowing bleed and crops to be built into your document as they can be easily added to your export settings. Everyone gets to keep their head. Be sure that before you hit the final send to make sure you have everything in your document ready for printing, including logos. If your document is using the NSU logo, then you must have it approved through NSU's Communication and Marketing Department before printing. If you need a logo made, please contact Communications and Marketing for more information. When using the NSU logo, there should always be a buffer to separate the logo from other design elements. Minimum clearance space is equal to the combined height of the letters in Northeastern State University, as well as from the edge of the page. No other element should infringe on this space. In case you need more information on logo usage, please see the graphic standards for further guidelines. Now that you have created your document and you've exported it, now what? You make sure that your audience has access to it in whatever way they need using web accessibility. This is a must for your digital audience. What is web accessibility? It is the inclusive practices or the inclusive practice of ensuring that websites or documents are designed and developed so those with disabilities can use those tools without any restrictions to view our documents. Why do we do it? It's for convenience for the audience. We want everyone to be able to view your documents. When we create web accessible documents, we are benefiting more people with or without disabilities that can easily access various web or print materials in their lifestyles. Some of these disabilities include auditory, cognitive, neurotypical, physical, and speech or visual based. It is always a great practice when accessibility comes toward ethically spoken aspects. To minimize legal risks in open lawsuits, the ADA prohibits discrimination in the U.S. against individuals with disabilities. This is why it is very important to research accessibility guidelines for your company or department to ensure your materials are compliant. Visit the ADA website for more information at www.ada.gov. Here is a web accessible checklist for you to keep on hand to help when you are building your document for web accessibility. To start, gain access to a screen reader so that you can see what they sound like read aloud. Other things to check for, making sure that your title shows instead of your file name and that your bookmarks are built in and appear when your document is open. Sometimes there's a tag tree in your document, and that will help create the reading order of your document. See below on the right-hand side for examples of how it looks in other programs like Google Docs, Microsoft Word, and Adobe Acrobat. So why is web accessibility so important? NSU has varying audiences, and it is the university's commitment that all material shared on the website be accessible to meet the needs of our audience. Not to mention, it also helps NSU avoid costly legal violations within the range of Oklahoma educational laws, OSHRI, Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, and the PDF/UA International Accessibility Standards. Below, in the bottom right lime green box, we have some resources, webinars, and tools to grasp more information on how to build web accessibility into your projects and documents. Speaking of resources, here's some more. View these sites we recommend visiting for further consideration regarding accessibility in our communications in the design world. Now we will open it up for our live Q&A with Eric and me. Make sure to stay until the end for the swag bag drawing.
Is
I
anybody?
listed the address there for CM Projects is where you would send.
Okay.
Tiffany was talking about. I think Beth has some good things she listed too.
There is a chat asking, do we only do logos for NSU related organizations? And yes.
And you might mention we appreciate if people make their own posters that they send them through CM Projects so we can take a look at them, give them suggestions on any changes to be made, or say this looks perfect.
Yes. Are there any other questions?
So that would apply to posters and t-shirts and all of that.
See a few questions for regarding the logo. So Jen can chime in if I say if I word things that need to be worded differently. But with the use of the logo for materials, it would refer back to Aletha's comment, if logo is placed on the materials, then sending the final file back through CM projects at NSU to get approval for the final piece and how the logo is used.
Yes,
Does that sound right, Jen?
primarily, we want to make sure that the that's an old car. That the logos are being used properly, particularly for outside use. Anytime you put it on the web, that's outside. If you shared an email, that could potentially be outside. As far as course materials and things like that are internal, I don't believe so. You should have some I would think that you have a little bit of a process to go through academic affairs on things there. We can certainly visit with Dr. Swearingen on that. And I know our folks over at Center for Teaching Learning and NSU Online have lots of templates and things to work with. But we're talking primarily about things that are going outside of the institution. We want to make sure that our branding is appropriate for the audience and used properly.
So even like I'm at the library here at Tahlequah campus, and I make trifolds and things like that for the SOAR events. So even those, do we need to send through to be approved?
Are they internal?
Yeah, they're for the incoming freshman events.
So
Like
they're
SOAR
coming in, so it's material handed out to folks from the outside.
that have enrolled. So they're students. They're just incoming students.
We can play it by ear. We would love to see what you have just from an informational standpoint. Sometimes we can be of assistance. Sometimes just knowing what's out there helps us to kind of work off of it for, some organic uses and things like that. So we would love to see some of the material that you're producing. I know a lot of folks default to Canva. Canva is not necessarily web accessible. I don't believe they have any intention of making it accessible. So, there are benefits to using some of those things. We have researched looking at some templates and things like that you can establish on Canva that have, look and feel for NSU. We just haven't gotten that far yet, but, if you've got some material, that you're putting out there in the world, we'd love to take a peek at it. But if it's, we don't look at all the SOAR materials necessarily, but again, we would love the opportunity to kind of give you some pointers.
What is the procedure for submitting like a PDF for your review?
Sure. You can send that, attach it in an email and send that to cmprojects@nsuok.edu. We would ask that you allow for several days for us to get to that because we've got things coming in and out all day long. And then we can certainly get that back to you and give you any kind of suggestions or, weigh in on that for you.
So you respond via email?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah. And we actually have some helpful tips, when we do send it back, why it may or may not meet accessibility standards or graphic standards. So, the logo might be, used improperly, cut off. We might have some suggestions on color palette. But yeah, we're primarily looking at the logo and the information. So yeah, we do respond through email, so you have a record of that as well.
And we do have a great graphic design team. So if you put in a design request form, we can always make the flyers and the posters and the billboards and different things with a 3-week turnaround.
When it's not April, just everything happens in April, y'all. If you have April events, let's start talking about them now. Because April's a blur. The end of this semester is also a blur. If you guys have some burning projects, please don't wait till December 12th to send those to us. If you need them this semester, we would love to visit with you about the things now. But yeah, we're always willing to brainstorm with you on ways that we can promote the things that you have going on.
And we can always set up a meeting too, if there's questions on a project you have in the works.
Yeah, this workshop is not necessarily to say, hey, you guys have to go out there and do all the things on your own. We realize that, you know, you want to take some ownership of the things that you're doing, and you know, we appreciate that. We do have a talented team here, so this was kind of a guidelines to help you guys feel less alone. You know, the graphic standards online is a helpful tool, but again, you know, we do have a full complimentary shop. It doesn't cost you anything short of the printing, you know, and it kind of helps folks to kind of get their ducks in a row.
Okay, if there are no more questions, I think I'm going to draw for the swag bag and we can call it good. Okay, last call for questions.